The Chicago Bears made their second wave of roster cuts going down yesterday, which now brings between players placed on injured reserve plus the roster cuts the number to almost 20 for the Chicago Bears. We're going to talk a little bit about that and surprise cuts that could come down the line for Chicago. We'll talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. So the Chicago Bears now have gotten the roster down 20 spots from where it was at the end of the preseason game. That's a combination of 2 players placed on injury reserve and 18 players either cut or waived by the Chicago Bears. And listen, the Bears are making their way through. I think one of the ones that's been most surprising for Bears fans coming up into this point has been Ian Wheeler, which I think when you look at the play that he had actually in this preseason, it wasn't nearly as strong as what it was last preseason. His inability to block in the backfield probably is what really sealed his fate here with Chicago in this round of waves, just because I mean, Ian Wheeler, he's has potential. And I want to be clear here. Ian Wheeler still has potential on the NFL level, absolutely. But I think when the Bears, them looking at players like even Deion Hankins, who is also out with injury, but Kyle Monangai more so as the future than a player like Ian Wheeler, especially with Kyle Monangai and his ability to block out the backfield. I still think the Bears are still going to be in pursuit for a number one running back in this offseason, unless, one develops in that way over the course of the season. And so, it is what it is when it comes down to that. But, when you look at some of the other cuts that happened and went down yesterday, Joe Wilson, the tight end, no surprise there. Our tight end room's pretty deep. Power Echols is a guy that I had tons of hope for. I had a lot of hope for him just because I think that Bears linebacking rotation is a little bit thin. And Power Echols, a really solid running back a middle linebacker out of North Carolina. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. It is what it is. I do think the Bears have shown themselves to have maybe a little bit more depth at the linebacker than initially expected, with Noah Sewell having such a strong preseason. And we'll see how that ends up shaking out for the Bears. But so far, all the cuts have all made sense. The Bears do have, a future for Zay Flowers. We're putting him on non-football injury-related list, which kind of keeps him in the building for the Chicago Bears. And, that's not a surprise there. We know that they really did love Zay Frazier and how he projects under Dennis Allen specifically. So, no surprise there when it for that one for Zay Frazier. I think that they're going to really, be looking to hold on to him, keep him at the practice squad level, and therefore, maybe have a role next season. And, we'll see how that shakes out. But, with Dennis Allen, the way that he likes to use defensive backs, as well as especially with you look at a player like Jaquan Brisker and his future also being kind of uncertain when it comes down to that as well. He's another player that, having solid defensive backs in that in that practice squad is going to be, big, especially for Dennis Allen and how he likes to use multiple defensive backs. So, but we have an episode going over all the cuts. If you guys want to listen to that, it's both on the podcast and the YouTube side. We dropped that yesterday after the cuts were announced. So go and check that out if you want a little bit more in-depth. But one of the players that a lot of people have question on is what's going to happen with Jahdae Walker, right? The undrafted rookie wide receiver for the Chicago Bears that had himself a strong preseason. Not great, but a really strong when he was a standout there. He had 8 receptions on 11 targets for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think that especially that impressive last drive that he had, him in the connection with Tyson Bagent in that win that we had over the Kansas City Chiefs, that, a toe tap. That shows amazing body control and awareness of where you are with it. And so I think that he is a guy that the Bears have some plans for. Declan Doyle said this. There are certain guys that walk outside for practice, and it's like a kid going to recess. They can't freaking wait to get rolling, and Jahdae is that way. Jahdae loves football. He showed up in the last drive against KC, and the play he made on our sideline was one of the better catches that I've seen. He's just a guy that's worked every day. He embodies the kind of love that you want for our football team. So it seems like, Jahdae, they're going to try to probably figure out a way to keep Jahdae Walker on here. Now, does he make the final 53-man roster? We'll see with that one. I don't necessarily believe he's going to make the initial 53-man roster, but I do think he is going to be a player that they try to keep on the practice squad. That wide receiver room is going to be tough to make. And, you look at it and you say 4 or 5 of the wide receiver positions are already locked in. One, because he's a special teams player in Devin Duvernay, but between Luther Burden, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and Oz, like those guys are all certainly going to make the roster. And so, JP Richardson's made himself a strong case as well. Tyler Scott in the game that he was utilized looked pretty good, but I think he's also a player that's kind of on the roster bubble as well for the Chicago Bears. But Jahdae Walker has made an impression, and it's clear that he's made an impression on this coaching staff. And I think that the fact that we haven't seen his name as part of those releases yet, they still got a lot to make, does show that the Bears are probably trying to talk to him, work with his agent to probably keep him here and to see how he's going to develop. And as an undrafted free agent, rookie in this season for the Bears, being able to keep him on your practice squad, get him there, kind of guide his development, things like that. He could be in for a role next year. Of course, we'll see how that shakes out for the Bears and what the Bears end up doing. But Jahdae's the type of guy that I'm not mad at the Bears wanting to keep on, stay locked in here and see what he can end up turning into for the Bears. So we'll see how that continues to go. But I don't think he's going to make the final 53-man. But again, injuries, those type of things could change that. Devin Duvernay is out with an injury. JP Richardson did get hurt. So those type of things could maybe open up a door for Jahdae Walker. I just don't necessarily think it's for certain yet. But, we'll see what happens there. With that said, there is an article over on Clutch Points that says surprise preseason cuts to watch out for before week 1 for the Chicago Bears. And some of these names on here are a little bit surprising. And at number 1, they actually have Roschon Johnson listed at number 1. And here's the thing with Roschon. Roschon has tons of potential. I think you've now seen so many different coaching staffs. Like Luke Getsy was still here when he was initially drafted. And one of the first clips that we saw was Luke Getsy and Matt Eberflus talking about how good they thought Roschon Johnson was going to be, right? Same thing with Shane Waldron and them coming on here. Then he wasn't healthy. There's been a lot of different coaching staffs, and one thing is evident. People believe that Roschon Johnson has talent. I don't think anybody's thinking that Roschon Johnson is devoid of talent, but one thing with the NFL, we know it takes more than just raw talent to be an NFL player. And that's just the reality of it. That's not something that's just against Roschon. That's just the reality of it. And even Ben Johnson has talked pretty glowingly about Roschon at different times. He offers up such a unique, not unique, but such an intriguing skill set that you need here for the Chicago Bears. But the problem is he's out with injury again. The season hasn't even started. And that's been one of the biggest things with Roschon is just you cannot rely on him. And thus, because he does get injured so often, how much of the progression has he missed out on? How far along would Roschon be right now if he was fully healthy the last 3 seasons and able to go through each season and be able to just grow and learn and develop? And that's the kind of thing that's such doubt about it, right? When you look at it, like of course, DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai, Roschon, like that could be a 3-man unit that has all kind of different varying skill sets that fit together. But when you look at it, like Roschon being number 2 last season, or the number 2 running back, and coming in this season as the number 2 running back, but as pass heavy as the Chicago Bears are expected to be this season, you still need balance. And Ben Johnson has talked much about that. You need that balance to help your passing game. You can't be a one-dimensional team. And I would love to have Roschon as a guy that can be a bruiser, that can go up the middle, that can go between the tackles, that can tough out those tough yards in the red zone. And he has the skill set to be that. But unfortunately, he cannot stay on the field enough to do that. And so them listing Roschon here as a player that could be a surprise cut between now and week 1, it is what it is. And you look at like just the size difference. For example, between Roschon Johnson and Kyle Monangai is there. But then you look at Kyle Monangai, just as good as running between the tackles, more elusive in the open field, just as good of a pass blocker despite his size, right? The fact that he was the second all-time leading rusher at Rutgers behind only Ray Rice, like there is tons of talent in a guy like Kyle Monangai. And unfortunately, with Roschon's inability to stay healthy, he could absolutely see a 7th-round rookie pass him up. And that's no knock on Kyle Monangai. I think Kyle is going to be a really good running back, a really solid running back in a rotation. It remains to be seen how good he's going to be able to be. But he's tons of talent there. And he is that gritty, in between the tackles runner that Roschon should be able to be. But because of Roschon's inability to stay healthy, it then brings questions on, is he going to be able to stick on this team? So, we'll see. I think the Roschon Johnson does end up sticking if they feel confident he's going to be healthy by week 1. But if there's any doubt that this can extend on where Roschon is not healthy by 2-3 weeks, they may place him on injury reserve initially, right? If it's something that could linger on. Again, I don't know that. I don't think that's been reported at all. But we'll see. We'll see. Roschon has had flashes, but unfortunately, flashes, you can't bet on your long-term plans, bet on flashes. And the Bears have shown themselves to be reluctant. Part of the reason Jaquan Brisker doesn't have a deal, a player that's shown a lot more than Roschon Johnson, part of the reason he doesn't have a deal is because of questions about his health. Roschon has been way less impactful than Jaquan Brisker has ever been. So the fact that there's questions around what Roschon or if he's going to end up making this roster, I mean, I would love to look at this article and say you're crazy, but the fact of the matter is there. Availability sometimes is the best ability, and Roschon in that has not shown a lot for the Bears. Next up, wide receiver Miles Boykin has been listed here, and I'd say this. Any wide receiver has the chance of not making this team, and that is because of the depth that we finally have at that linebacker position, right? Olamide, Devin Duvernay, Miles Boykin, J.P. Richardson, Jahdae Walker, like these are all guys that are fighting over for that spot, and we shall see what's going to happen here. Like, Miles Boykin is a veteran wide receiver, and don't get me wrong, I do think that there's a floor there that may not be there with some of the younger, more unproven guys, but do the Bears feel confident in the floor of the guys that they have as your top 4 wide receivers to where they do want to go more upside at that wide receiver position? And that's a legitimate question here, and we'll see. Miles Boykin is a former third-round pick, and you look at his size and his catching ability, and that's what initially got him in the NFL. The potential's there. But again, this is one of the I think in almost any other year, Miles Boykin makes the roster. I think in a lot of years as well, Jahdae Walker makes the roster for the Chicago Bears. But the Bears have really good depth now at the wide receiver position. And a guy like Boykins, I just don't think he makes it. Like one start over the last 3 years. We'll see what happens. But I think the Bears are really comfortable. Oz, Luther Burden there as your 3 and your 4. That's some pretty good depth with DJ and Rome. We'll see. If he does get in, it would be because he is a veteran and he still has some upside. Make no mistake about it. And his size could be something that the Bears really do want to utilize. But with having a guy like Colston Loveland, who also can be lined up as a wide receiver with his route running and his size, I just don't know if he's going to end up making it. And then lastly, they list Andrew Billings here. Now I'm going to call cap here. I'm not even going to try to rationalize this one. I get it that Javon Dexter and Grady Jarrett and all that type of things. But you saw what happened to the Chicago Bears defensive line after Andrew Billings went down last year. I just don't, unless injury or something pops up, I don't see a world in which Andrew Billings doesn't make this roster. He is just such a floor raiser for the Chicago Bears and such a consistent aspect of what he brings to the game, play in and play out, that I just don't personally see where the Bears would want to move off of Andrew Billings. I'm going to call cap here. Again, I'm somebody who I like to try to see the validity in everything. And I just don't think, if the only way that I would see that Andrew Billings would have a tough time making this roster is if Shamar Turner was healthy and he had himself a hell of a preseason, and neither one of those things happened. So I think when you look at Dennis Allen and the flexibility that he brings here, adding Shamar Turner was really good. And him having a chance to learn behind Grady Jarrett is really good. But I think he can learn a lot from Andrew Billings. I don't see a world in which Andrew Billings is cut. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, if it does happen, it would be a surprise for me at least. I don't know how you guys would feel about it. Maybe more guys out in the audience see this as a more legitimate thing than I do. And if you do, great. I mean, I just, for one, don't see it. I don't see it. Like I said, the only reason that I would see it if Billings did not heal back from injury pretty well, which he has done, or if he got another major injury over preseason, which hasn't happened. I don't think that. I think Andrew Billings has really good security because, again, for all that, I think Javon Dexter, you guys know I think the world of Javon Dexter. Some people label me a Javon Dexter apologist, right? But I will say this, his inconsistencies, you need a veteran like Billings and what he can bring on that in that rotation. And I just don't necessarily see them moving on from him. But, again, the writer of this article does over at Clutch Points, and maybe they know something that I don't know. I don't think they do, but maybe they do. Next up, the Chicago Bears. We talked a little bit about this on the breaking news episode in regards to the roster cuts as well. the Bears are trying to find a trade option for Jordan McFadden, who played 124 snaps over 2 preseason games for the Chicago Bears. And here's the thing for Jordan McFadden. I'll say this, right? He's in his 3rd season in the NFL. He was with the Los Angeles Chargers. They drafted him in the 5th round of the 2023 draft. He started 2 games. He appeared in 13 over his NFL career. And here's the thing. The question is why the Bears are doing this. And I think they're doing this because he is a guy that's young, that clearly is probably not going to be in the Bears rotation by what this is. And the Bears and Ryan Poles, for what it's worth, are being smart in trying to find some compensation for a player that does have some value and, for what it's worth, played pretty damn well. In his snaps, he played well. He didn't play, it wasn't a world beater or anything, but he played well enough to where it would make sense if the Bears did try to keep him on the roster. But again, the depth here, I do think that this means that Ryan Bates is probably going to stick around. If they were going to cut Ryan Bates, I think McFadden would be a great player to be able to step in there. But this is the Bears trying to see what type of compensation they can get back for a player that they're going to try to get. I do think it's going to be a late round draft pick, make no mistake about it. And, while Pros has gotten creative with those before, I don't think it's going to be anything of note. But I will say this, if you get anything back in a trade for a player that wasn't going to make your roster, I'm not necessarily mad at that, right? Again, that's smart reporting by that, and we'll see what happens when it comes down to it. Now, with that said, there was a development from practice yesterday. So with training camp being over, we're not doing the post-training camp videos. This is just normal practices for the Chicago Bears. The Bears did have a practice yesterday after roster cutdowns. And for what it's worth, the Bears had 2 healthy running backs on the field. That was DeAndre Swift and that was Britton Brown. That's it. Those are the 2 healthy options for the Chicago Bears at running back right now. Courtney Cronin tweeting this. Bears practice just wrapped. Heavy individual drill, special teams, mainly punt return focus today. Team is really thin at running back. DeAndre Swift and Britton Brown were the only 2 practicing. Now, we know that Kyle Monangai is dealing with an injury. We know that Roschon Johnson is dealing with an injury. We know that Deion Hankins is out for the season due to a knee injury that he sustained in preseason. So that does put Travis Homer again in a position to maybe make this roster, but also he missed most of training camp with the injury. The injuries have stacked up for the Bears at the running back position, a position that many people already looked at as a weak and thin position for the Chicago Bears. Ian Willer, gone. They didn't keep Ian Willer. They didn't retain him. So there's questions now between now and when the Bears start playing football on the football field in 13 days. What does it look like? What is the running back? Is Monangai back, right? Now, we did hear that Monangai and Roschon should be available week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings. Great. If they're not, do the Bears feel confident in DeAndre Swift and Britton Brown and being able to do that? We'll see, right? But it is a concern that for as much balance as Ben Johnson has talked about that he wants to have with this team in the run in the pass game, that you're already down 2 running backs your first practice after roster cuts. So we'll see what happens with that one with the Bears. But I think overall, this happens, is that how you deal it. The next man up mentality is the right mentality to have, but you can only have so much next man up. But we've seen the Bears do it before where they've signed a running back that's come in for 1 or 2 weeks and actually been able to be productive. That is the nature of the running back position with the Chicago Bears, especially if you have a solid enough offensive line, which I do believe that the Bears are going to have. I still got my questions about where's the confidence coming from with Braxton Jones, but that's a story for another day, right? So we'll see what happens here. Overall, the Bears have they got some things that they need to work out and solidify between now and the start of the season, and we'll see what happens when it comes down to that. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it, man. The last topic that a lot of people are asking are, of course, about Caleb Williams, right? And David Hall of 670 The Score said this. Caleb struggled running the offense Friday night against Kansas City. He's not adapted well or consistently to Ben Johnson's scheme and all things that he's focused on in the details. He's a second-year quarterback. I'm not going to make excuses for him, but I'm also not going to tell you his socks need to be pulled up, and if he did that, he'd be better quarterback, like some ridiculous commentary over the weekend. Slow down, everyone. And here's the thing, and I'm going to tell y'all this, and I know that a lot of the Bajan baddies don't like to hear this. Caleb Williams is still better than Tyson Bagent. Newsflash. For those that needed to hear that, Caleb Williams is still a better quarterback than Tyson Bagent. Now, Caleb Williams still has a lot that he has to show. The sky is not falling for Caleb Williams. It's not falling for this offense before the season starts. We knew coming into the season there was a lot that the Bears had to show, that they had to prove, and they had to grow from. Now, can Caleb do that in the amount of time that he has? That's the question here that a lot of people are legitimately asking with Caleb Williams. And I can't take away or knock anybody for asking that question of Caleb. There are going to be questions coming into this. I hate to tell y'all, there was never going to be a situation in which we came in here and still did not have questions. Caleb just was not going to play enough in preseason, or the level of competition wasn't going to be same in preseason. You know, it is what it is. But at the same token, I'll say this, like, for those that feel confident in Tyson Bagent, here's what I'll tell you. The Bears are still going to roll with Caleb. But if you feel that confident in Tyson Bagent, guess what? The benefit of it is that if Caleb does not work, you got the guy that you're confident in. But I think that this team still has tons of confidence in Caleb Williams. And I think Ben Johnson still knows exactly how he wants to develop Caleb, and he has a plan for that. Now, that may come through some rocky moments for the offense this offseason. And the sky is falling Bears fans are absolutely going to react to that. And we'll see where that gets us. But the Bears are rolling with Caleb. And again, I want to see everybody in a Bears uniform do well. And we'll see. Week 1 against the Vikings, let's see what happens on the football field. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Shy Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. I'm sorry, Shy Bears Central at gmail.com. If you guys want to leave us a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. I love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.